Kama, nobody understands that there's a linkage between Kama, ISA, Bofia, and NICOM. You can't do any of those things in isolation of a joint review. And if you understand that Kama, it took us 30-something years and another 22 years to review it twice. Since then, 2006, they've reviewed the United Kingdom's Kama, Company and Allied Matters, the Company and Allied Law, almost about 20-something times. Why? Just to your question as to saying that you have to wait for practice. Yeah, the truth of it. The rate of change in business is always moving at an exponential rate, faster than the rate of change in regulation. However, something has happened after the financial crisis, global financial crisis. Regulators therefore understand, and the example in Nigeria is just go and ask the DMO, that the reason you have an FMDQ that is successful today, that you have a debt market that is successful today, is that Abraham Moako understood what the real job of the new 21st century regulator is. He goes to sit down with the players.
Well, we'll move over now to the markets. Let's cross over to the FMDQ exchange, please. Thaddeus Udebe of UBA Treasury will wrap up the week on fixed income securities and money markets and system liquidity. Good morning, Thaddeus. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
So how would you say the interbank market lending rates fared this week, and what were the major drivers?
Opening this week, we saw very strong volatility in the interbank funding market. We saw that market opened on Monday at 39% and 40% for the secured and unsecured lending rates at the interbank market. And the key driver for this has been the fact that CBN commenced daily open market operations last week, and that continued into this week. If you recall, last week, Monday, on the 3rd of December, we saw a strong spike at the various segments of the foreign exchange market, which was very much pronounced at the parallel market, where the Naira got to 317 Naira per unit of dollar traded. And so the central bank was much more concerned about the speculative tendencies at that window. And in that, as a quick response to that, the central bank improved supply of FX at the various segments of the market. And the second strategy of the central bank was to keep liquidity tight. And part of that strategy was to continue with daily open market operations. And that continued into this week. So opening on Monday, we saw that system liquidity was up by a credit of 200 billion, but there was weekly wholesale intervention on that day, where central bank sold about $210 million to various market agents, and that tightened liquidity further, in addition to the daily OMO auctions of that day. So that progressed. On Tuesday, we also had another OMO on Wednesday, and by Tuesday, liquidity was almost tight, and we saw rates spike to intraday high of 100% before it closed at 60 and 70% for the secured and unsecured lending rates at the market. And so that had happened until yesterday, when market got some respite, when about 498 billion treasury bills matured into the system. However, yesterday also there was another OMO. CBN took out about 295 billion, but that was not sufficient enough to keep market very tight. So we expect market to be up today, marginally up about 117 billion credit.
Interbank market liquidity affect fixed income, treasury bills, and the bonds market?
Yeah, looking at the treasury bills market and the bond market this week, you find that top of the players in those markets are the commercial banks and the merchant banks. They account for about 65% of activity in those windows. And you will recall that most of the banks fund their activities from the interbank market. And given that the interbank market is very tight and the cost of accessing funds in that window is very high, that impacted activity in those markets. We saw a very bearish trend at the treasury bills market this week. It had started last week and it continued this week. If you look at the yield curve, you find that the shortest treasury bills, the 1 month tenor, inched up to about 16%, while the longest tenor, about the 364-day bill, inched up to about 17% yield. And that is a reflection of a sell-off we've seen in the market as investors continue to sell down their positions to free liquidity and also continue to reduce their mark-to-market losses as a result of expected rise in yields. On the bond market also, we saw that there was reduced activity in that market. What we noticed was that the yield was pretty flat in that window, which is a reflection of low level of activity in that market as investors show apathy in that market.
Okay. Thank you very much, Thaddeus, for your time. Thaddeus Udebe is of UBA Treasury. After the break, we'll look at today at the Nigerian stock market with pre-open market analysis. Do stay with us. It's the final trading day of the week, and trading activities have resumed at the Nigerian equities market. Let's cross over now to the exchange to see what the day looks like. Hello, Temple. So does it look like it will be a good day today for traders and investors?
It's hard to say right now, Jim. The market is flat, up some 0.01%. And we've seen a lot of the companies that made losses yesterday trying to recover from those losses. It looks like some investors have taken advantage of those low prices. The likes of FCMB, Seplat that lost 10% yesterday, has gained some 10% now this morning. United Capital, which was one of the worst hits yesterday, has also recovered some 9.7% of its share price now. FCMB has done over 100 million units of shares this morning in early trades, and it's up some 3.25% in terms of the share price, and that's about the most actively traded company right now. It may remain like that all through the week, albeit the fact that there's a report that came out of the media yesterday regarding the non-performing loans of all the banks in the Nigerian market, totaling over 2 trillion naira and all that. So that notwithstanding, tells you that the banking names, the financial services companies, are still what to pick right now in the markets. Transcore is also found on the top trades chart of the market, has done some 464,000 units this morning, while Sterling Bank has done some 427,000 units. However, we have a couple of stories or notices basically from two companies. One is Capital Hotel, giving a breakdown of what transpired between one of the key actors in a litigation that it has that relates also to lodging in an hotel and not paying money. The update was made available to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and this might also interest some other companies or shareholders of Continental Reinsurance. The notice also came to the Nigerian Stock Exchange. I think that was late yesterday. It's about the rescheduling of the extraordinary general meeting of that company. It's been moved from November, of course, now to 20th of December, and it has to do with a very significant decision on the holders of the fully paid ordinary shares of that company. So that meeting, which was meant to hold in November, will now hold on 20th of December for, of course, what relates to shares holding for all of these holders. Chimeze.
What does next week look like?
I think the sentiment we've been seeing lately will persist next week, given the buy interest of a lot of the domestic investors and, of course, the consistent exit of the foreign investors, offshore investors, given their risk of sentiment on equities at this point in time. And that, of course, is informed by the level of political tension in the country. Unless anything changes in terms of news for any particular company before we can see companies that will go on bid. But right about now, I think the last of the companies that was on bid for investors was Diamond Bank, and of course the profit has been taken over that and nothing has changed. So next week, this kind of mixed sentiment that we've been seeing in the market throughout this week is what will probably continue next week as investors continue to buy into a few names taking position ahead of post-election period thereabouts.
Well, Temple, let's see how that goes. Well, it's not yet time to say thank God it's Friday, because I'm going to see you later today. Enjoy the rest of the day, and that's it on the show for today and, of course, for the week. Thank you very much for being part of it. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu.